All right, now.
Ruseas Brosis Foundation. This is Darwin checking in once again, another one of our Monday sessions, the Ruseas Empowerment Session. And today we talk about technology. So I am here waiting on my guest to get settled and comfortable, Norwin. So I will tell you a little bit about my guest today. You know, a few days ago, we had a conversation. Last week, we had St. Ryan Steele, who did a great job and talk about food. Today, we want to give you a whole new look at another technological area that we have never looked at before. We're going to look at this area so deep that we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to go as much as possible. So for the ones out there who are watching or listening, please bear in mind that our brother Norwin will be taking questions afterwards, okay? So I want to welcome you, Norwin, to the Ruseas Empowerment Hour. How are you doing today, Norwin?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well, man. Thank you so much for asking. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to grace our presence here today at the Ruseas Empowerment Hour. And a lot of persons may not know you. Some may have seen you, you know, when you were a few years younger. Some may not know what your, some persons may not remember what you look like. Some might look at you now and might be saying, I remember that guy. I know him. He was in the class together with me. You didn't play football like a lot of other persons. As you know, I didn't play football as well. And so we don't have that to add to our resume like a lot of persons do. However, you know, for the persons who did have their contribution in football, I'm sure you did your contribution. And for those who didn't, now is an opportunity to put your contribution together and give back to the Ruseas Foundation, through using Ruseas Foundation as a vehicle to support the Ruseas institution that we went to. So Norwin, today you want to talk about technology. It's such a big, broad topic. So, you know, just to introduce yourself a little bit, can you introduce yourself to the viewers so they know who and what we're talking about today?
All right, for those who don't know me or don't remember me, or for those who cannot recognize me, because I was a lot more slimmer and more beautiful when I was a young man going to Rossi, but now I've decided to adorn myself with these gray hair, you know. So yeah, my name is Norwin Phillips. You know, I'm a father. I'm a husband. I was once a student at Rossi. I went to school with a lot of these guys that you're so familiar with. For example, Byron Spence and I, we went to school together. Garnet Deer, St. Ryan Steele was my classmate up in sixth form. You know, I used to see you when you used to go to school. I used to pass you on the street coming down Stonewall or Dry Hill, somewhere about that area, right? I don't think we've ever had conversations, but I do remember you, you know. So but here we are, right? A couple of years later, I left Rossi upper sixth form, that's lower sixth form, in 1991. So that's about 29 years ago. And after I left Rossi's, I worked in banking for a little bit, and then I migrated. I moved to the US to go to college. And actually, so while I was working at the bank, I had a terrible accident where I broke my hand, and I also injured my foot. And while I was at home, I got the Gleaner at the time, and it there was an advertisement in there for Technical Career College in New York City, and the course was Computer Networking Engineer. And it kind of dawned on me, hey, I needed to do something, because working at the bank, it's a nice job, it's a nice gig for a young man, but it wasn't going to cut it. And one of the thing that I really wanted to do when I was a younger man growing up was to be a pilot, work in aviation. And you know, that didn't quite pan out, and I saw that opportunity to kind of slip away to the US to get involved in technology. And I said, hey, let me check it out. Let me see what, that is about. And I ventured. And here I am today, a couple of years later, and working in technology for quite a while now.
That's a very rich, a very broad and wide introduction, of course, of yourself, Norwin. And I'm so sorry you had that accident. And passing me today, sorry about that. Today, me and Mr. John was talking about that same, how we the kind of food we ate, how we kept ourselves healthy. That was another way of keeping myself healthy, walking to and from school. You lived much further away, so you had to take a ride. So that's why you were passing me there. So but that didn't take away from you to become who you are today. So now you are here. You are today. You have passed through the institution of Ruseas. You have gone through the institution of banking also, where you went to further education also after you mentioned that accident. And now you are a technologist. Is that what you would call yourself? And just to follow up on that, you talk about, putting technologies together, like you're talking about your banking information, and then you went on to study to do technology. How do you put those two together?
Well, so when I went into banking, it was a means to an end, right? I needed to make some money. I needed to have a decent job that could actually pay the bills and put some savings aside. So when the opportunity came for me to work in the bank, I started working there. I worked there for about 2 years, but I don't know whether or not I saw a path for myself forward, and for me to be, I needed to enjoy what I was doing, and I enjoyed it to an extent, but it didn't give me the satisfaction that I needed. So I guess at the time when I had the accident, it gave me some time to think. Where do I see myself in the next couple of years? You know, um, Based on how the world is evolving, where can I put how can I position myself to be able to capitalize on the opportunities that might come along? And I figured this is how I looked at it. If if I were to get an opportunity to study abroad, right? Once I'm done with that educational experience, I would be able to move back to Jamaica and capitalize on the international exposure to be able to gain that good footing in whatever institution would decide to hire me. Of course, everyone leaves Jamaica with the idea of going back sooner rather than later. But here I am, 27 years later. I I still haven't gone back yet. But I guess after I had that accident and I was laid up in bed for a couple of weeks, it gave me time to think, and also an opportunity to browse the newspaper to see what's out there. And it's just an opportunity that came by, and I figured, hey, I would apply, being that I met the educational qualifications that they required at the time, and I was accepted. And within a short 2 months later, I migrated. I'm a matter of fact, I like to tell my kids that when I left Jamaica with $980 in my pocket, a student visa, and a dream. So I actually left home. I actually left home with $1,000, but we were at the point in Jamaica where they still collected departure taxes at the
Oh,
airport. So you had to pay the twenty
have to
dollars while
pay.
you lined up. So that's how I left Jamaica with $980 in my pocket, a student visa, and a dream. So
And 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 that you were very fortunate at that time, because I mean, you had money, you had a place, you had somewhere to go. Talk about persons who might be leaving and without that opportunity of having somewhere to go, but maybe somewhere in Jamaica wanted to do technology. How would you suggest someone would start to do that? In
well,
looking at the landscape of Jamaica now, how would you suggest someone start that? Not as fortunate as you were with the educational background, but just as a layman, how do you suggest someone start to get into technology at this point?
well, I think that's a very good question, right? Technology is a very broad field, and you have to know where you want to go before you look for directions or instructions on how to get there. So if a person tells me that they want to get in technology, the question I'm going to ask is, what facet of technology do you want to get involved in? There's
Absolutely.
there's database administration, there's system administration, there's network engineering and implementation, there's wireless services. So if you there's web development. So if you're serious about getting involved in technology, you have to have an idea about what technology is, what it does, and the different areas. And if you don't know, then it's an opportunity for you now to start looking at these areas that I've mentioned. Now, once you get a good grasp of what is done in each of these areas, then the internet is out there. I'd say jump on Google, find out what a network administrator does, find out what a network engineer does, what a database administrator does, and web developer, and see which one of those areas pique your interest. There are also different courses that you could read about. For example, there's the A plus certification, there's Network plus certification, there's what's called web development for dummies, networking for dummies. These are some of the topics that you could research on Google, and that will give you an insight as to what these people do in these different areas, and identify an area that really appeals to you. And when you identify the area that appeals to you, then you start digging for more information. And for the people that are listening to this broadcast, I'd encourage you to reach out to the Brosis Foundation. I would be one of the persons that would be able to answer some of those questions for you. For now, you could get to us at Ruseas without the apostrophe. It's ruseas.brosis@gmail.com. And if you send some questions or inquiries as to trying to ascertain some information as to technology and how you could get involved, we will be more than able, more than willing and able to be able to answer those requests, those questions for you, and give you some guidance.
Wonderful. I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of persons would be, I'm sure, more than willing to help. You know, you went so broad on that in explaining that technology, because a lot of persons, including myself, when I hear of technology, I start thinking of gadgets, my cell phone, microwave, the smart TV, iPhone, things like these. So, I mean, can you differentiate to some persons, just like I said, might not be as educated as you are, that might want to know, what is he talking about? I mean, how can I get into this? Because this sounds interesting. Because they look at you, they see all this gray hair under your chin, and they were told, I mean, growing up, gray hair means wisdom. And they say, look at you, they see wisdom. And listening to you speak, you're speaking at stuff that you know about. You speak so confidently, so eloquently. Anyone would want to be like you, a child growing up, maybe anyone. Now, I would want you to tell me a little bit about, gadgets and things like that. How do you, involve technology with these gadgets? Because that's what persons see when they talk about technology.
Well, so again, right? All of these gadgets that you have mentioned, the gadgets are pretty much useless without the technology that are actually implemented or running on them. For example, your smartphone. Consider your smartphone as your own little personal computer that you walk around with, but there are technologies that are built and installed and actually integrated into these gadgets that allows us to perform the tasks that we perform. Talk about WhatsApp, which is a forum that we have our discussion on, right? So WhatsApp is an application that was developed and was integrated per se into the piece of hardware technology that allows for communication. There's also YouTube, there's Facebook, right? So you need these gadgets to be able to execute these software codes that are out there that allows us to enjoy a more streamlined process in
Yes.
communication. And I
Yes.
laugh when I mention a more streamlined and a more direct and um, a more synchronous kind of communication, because I remember a couple years ago when I moved to this country, I remember having wrote a letter to my sister, and the letter goes like this: dear sister, I hope when these few line of mine reaches you, it will find you in the best of health. And I
Yes.
sometimes sit back and I laugh about it, and I said, why did I do that? Well, there was not a medium or a forum for me to be able to communicate with them instantaneously. The telephone was not as prevalent as it is now in Jamaica. Of course, there was no WhatsApp. The internet was still in its infancy, because the internet
Yes.
started to gain popularity in about 1995 with American Online. You've got mail. that kind
Yes,
of stuff, right?
yes, yes,
So
yes.
I sent that letter to say, hey, I want to communicate with you. I want to let you know that I've gotten to my destination safely. However, I don't know if I'll still be around or you will still be around when you get this letter. That's why I said, I hope when these few line of mine reaches you, it will find you in the best of health, because who knows what's going to happen, 3 weeks from now. But with the advent of technology, with the advent of networking, with the advent of these gadgets that you mentioned, we can now have these kind of conversations in real time. I read an article the other day wherein this girl, she got her smartphone taken away by her mother, and she started using her fridge, her refrigerator, to send tweets, because again, all these gadgets have these technologies that are built in that allows us to communicate in real time. So
I re-
it really it does offers a lot of opportunity for a lot of folks to get involved in technology. So we talked about web development, we talked about database administration, we talked about system administration, right, network design, etc. But there now we're talking about software development, because you have the gadget, which is your smartphone, albeit an iPhone or an Android. Then you need some technology that allows you to communicate on those platforms. All right. And there goes a whole new avenue of opportunities open up for folks that are interested in working in technology.
Awesome, awesome. I like the way you kind of you leapfrog the telegram process, because you went straight into the writing a letter back then, how we used to write letters. And a lot of persons can relate to when they write a letter. That was the opening line. I hope when you get this letter, this is and I hope you are in the best of health. That's what we used to do, because we used to write pen pals when we got those children's own. We searched for pen pals in them, and that's
Hmm.
how we started it. That's how we started writing these things, and it developed, and it helped us in our writing skills also, and it creates how we can socialize with persons who we're not seeing in front of our faces. So it's been in the making for so long, this technology that you're talking about right now. Now I know you are not normally. I hear you. You tell me you are also a lecturer in this field. Now I want to develop the point that you're making in regards to starting from the telegram. You went straight to writing the letter. Now where we are in web development, persons are sending emails now on the spot.
Hmm.
You can send a text message. You're talking about sending using a fridge to send. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. So because pretty much all of these gadgets that are being developed have the ability and capability to connect online some way, somehow, right? And so with that, as long as you're able to connect online, you're now integrated into a broader technology spectrum, and it allows you to communicate, right? So anything that can go online can allow you to communicate, right? But
Yes, yes.
it's quite interesting when you mentioned pen pals, right? So think about pen pals, what pen pals used to be then, and think about what Facebook is now, right? It's just morphed from the asynchronous method of communication that we were accustomed to back in the days, sending a letter, hoping that it gets to its destination, the person
Yes.
reads it, they're going to respond to us, and we hope that we get it back, and we sit around and wait patiently. At that point, right, everyone exercised patience. But now with the advent of technology, and you have the Facebooks, and before the Facebook it was MySpace. Don't know if you guys know about that. And
Yes,
then
yes, I remember that.
I think it was Google tried to launch their own, and it didn't really take off, because and then you have Instagram and Twitter. Everyone wants to know everything now, right? So that's where we leverage technology to really create these efficiency and the urgency of now, right? We could communicate in real time with people. I remember when I was growing up in Jamaica, you know speaking to someone, let's say from the Dominican Republic, or someone in South Africa, seems
Yeah.
like something that's so far-fetched.
Oh,
But
yes.
now, anyone in Jamaica, in any corner of the island, or anywhere in the world, as long as they have connectivity,
Yes,
they can pretty much communicate with anyone in the world. So as we would say, the world is getting smaller, even though it doesn't mean that it's literally getting smaller, but it just means
yes.
that we do have the ability to communicate, you know, much easier, right?
I agree. I agree totally, because just like as you were talking about that, at the Facebook, the idea popped in my head. We have the world pretty much in our hands, not literally, but when you look at it, we can talk to just about anyone anywhere in the world when we have, you mentioned connectivity. Now, all these mediums of communication, the YouTube, the WhatsApp, the Facebook. Now, when you look at that, you said connectivity. Now we talk about the internet. Now, can you expound on that for me? The mediums and how it interconnects with the internet to get those messages across.
Yeah. So when we mention the internet, right? The internet, what is the internet, right? So the internet is nothing more than an interconnection of networks. So we in technology we have what we call your network, or your local area network, which we refer to as
Yes.
your LAN, LAN.
Yes.
And
Yes.
John over in South Africa has his local area network, and he's connected to the provider, right, which we call his ISP. They have a local area network, and all these
Yes.
networks are somehow interconnected with each other. That gives us that connectivity, or that
Yes.
connection ability to be able to communicate from any corner of the earth, if
Yes.
the earth does have a corner, because based on
Yes.
what I was taught, it was round, right? But it does allow us. So we're all connected in some way, shape, or form, right? And there are agreements between providers. Right now I'm sitting in my home office, and I am connected to you who are sitting in your home office somewhere up in northern Florida. And there are folks that are connecting across the globe, on the internet, right? And but yet we're able to communicate, right? So when we talk about mediums, I'm in my home right now, and I'm connected over my wireless network that connects to a device sitting somewhere in the house, which is called an access point, which is
Right.
connected
Right.
to a cable that runs out the side of the house and goes into some conduit back to my internet service provider, which is cross connected with so many other internet providers. And down in Miami, at Bayside, Miami, there's what's called the NAP. For folks who are interested in technology, could look that up. It's called Network Access Point of the America. They're
Yes.
fiber optic cables that are running underneath the sea, the ocean floor, from
Yes.
North Miami, Bayside, all the way down to Montego Bay, that allows this communication to take place. There are wires that are running underneath the sea that's going over to Europe, so on and so forth. So that's how we are all connected, right? So the mediums, when we talk about mediums in technology, we talk about mediums as being wired or wireless. And sometimes you will have to have what's called a hybrid kind of network that leverages a combination of the different mediums. This communication that is happening between us and across to anyone that's listening or watching is also happening across a hybrid of mediums, because I could speak to where I am right now. I am connected by way of a wireless medium to a wired medium, which is then transmitted, across to wherever the signal needs to go to anyone that's tuned in.
Yes. And just to expound on that a little bit, you mentioned the wired medium, and to my understanding, you're talking about that little internet device box you get from your service provider that's connected to the wall inside of your house. That's what you're talking about, the wired
Yeah,
medium. Am
so
I
so
correct?
yeah, so that goes to the ISP, which is,
Right.
when I say ISP, it means the internet service provider, by way of that wired medium. So that wired medium, it though so the wired medium can be it can be in a form of electrical impulses, right, which is sent across your coaxial cable, or light, which is sent across your fiber, right, your fiber
Right.
optics cable. So it depends on. So even though you have wired mediums, they do come in different forms, right? Again, light or electrical impulses. So those mediums get transmitted back to your internet service provider, and it's sent along the path to the destination, right?
Yes.
There's a whole underlying design and and logics that this works on, that we could probably spend another 2 years talking about it. So
I
because
totally agree.
yeah,
I,
there's an IP address, and there's a subnet mask, there's this routing, all that stuff. But we're not going to get that in depth into technology, of course. As for folks who are interested in learning about that stuff, if
yes.
they do watch and they're interested, then they can reach out to us, and we'll be able to provide some some guidance as to how you can start
Yes.
acquiring this knowledge and skill sets.
Of course, absolutely. And I'm sure you're going to put your information out there. So persons who are interested can always reach out to Norwin, and he will give you the information on where to start, where to go. Because what we're trying to do is to use the Ruseas Brosis Foundation as a vehicle to transfer this information out to you, for persons who are interested can take this on. And you talk about the wired connectivity back then, where we had the persons might remember telephone company JTC. The telephone operator had to come and connect the wires to the pole to the house, and to get you using those house phones that had wires all the way. Now they
Hmm.
came with a wireless rechargeable phones. Now we have wireless phones. So
Hmm.
now the technology has gone so far that basically what I'm wearing in my ears, a lot of persons call them earbuds. You can also talk now without even away from your wireless phone. So you now have wireless earbuds. So you can tell how the information is being transmitted. That's what you explained just now about the wireless information. How do you measure that kind of transmission between these wireless devices or gadgets?
If I understand the question clearly, how do you measure? Can you repeat the question for me? How do you
Yes.
measure the?
Yes. What do you use to measure the sound that comes towards it between the devices, these gadgets? How do you measure? Is there a medium of measurement that you use? Like, I mean, is it nanosecond, millisecond?
Okay. Oh, I
How
see.
do you do
Okay.
that?
So yeah. So in terms of transmission of information, right? We're talking about, you know, for for you and I, right? You and I are speaking right now, and like I told you, we're going across different mediums. So we're going across wireless medium to wired medium, and you were getting it on your side. So every word that's spoken out of my mouth, it's sound wave. There's a microphone that's here that picks up this sound wave and converts that into bits and bytes.
Yes.
That's then being transmitted over RF, which is called radio frequency.
Yes.
So the radio frequency is then transmitted to the AP, which we call the access point. It's transmitted along the electrical impulses. So again,
Yes.
I say, hello, Darwin. It seems like you're hearing me instantaneously, but you're not hearing me instantaneously, right? Because this communication is happening in different instants of time, in
Yes.
milliseconds, in microseconds, and nanoseconds. Well, what is a millisecond? A millisecond is a second divided into 1,000 parts. So
Right.
by the time I could say hello, which is 1 second, right? A millisecond can carry 1,000 different signals, right? A microsecond allows you to send a million different communication. A nanosecond allow you to send a billion different communications. Again, it's just from a mathematical perspective that you can relate to this. You cannot relate to it, as an individual, because again, we can only perceive a second, right? But
Yes.
that's how it happens. So you're in your home with your kids. You only have a single internet connection, right? But your kids could be browsing YouTube. You could be streaming some video on Netflix, and we can
Yes.
be having this conversation at the same time. And they're all getting out there, and they're all getting out there, but everything is being transmitted in a different instance of time, right? I hope that kind of provides some clarity for you.
That sure does. So now we're talking about communication in technology, using technology to communicate from over mediums to different persons, different areas. So I know you might be you, based on your level of knowledge with communication and your technology, how do you think we could, you know develop a process or develop a method to help Ruseas for the younger persons who might want to take a career in it? Is there a specific way that you have that we could implement use this as a vehicle to implement a program at the Ruseas school to develop on their already technology?
Okay, it's interesting that you mentioned that because last week, I think during the interview, St. Ryan mentioned, about having trade schools, right? So there's something similar in the world of technology, right? What I do, I have expertise in the deployment, the design, the implementation, and solutions, solutioning of networks, right? Small
Yes.
network, medium-sized network, very large network for enterprises. But I did actually have formal education on it, but it is not. You don't need a formal education. You don't need to get a master's degree to be able to be an excellent network engineer, right?
Yes.
However, I am not saying this to say kids should not go to school to get a degree. I'm just saying there are other avenues that we could leverage. And here's how, an institution like our alma mater or C's could leverage the availabilities of these industry certs, right? So we have what's called a CCNA, which is a certified Cisco Network Associate. There's also an MSA, which is Microsoft Certified System Administrator. They have the same thing for database and web development, etc. Right? Network Plus certifications. Now, just like in school, when you get to grade 9, students are normally asked, what areas are you interested in? And I remember back in my days, we selected whether or not we wanted to do science, arts, business,
Yes.
etc. Well, there's now technology, right? So are you interested in technology? Okay, being that you're interested in technology, let's develop these classes that prepare the students for these industry recognized certifications.
Yes.
For example, CCNP or CCNA are some of the most well-known certifications in industry. If we, as an institution, I'm talking about ROSI, were to implement these um, these career certs as a part of the curriculum, the student would have from grade 9, grade 10, and grade 11 to really learn and master these technologies. So by the time they get to the end of grade 11, they could be leaving school with a professional certification, right? In Cisco
Absolutely.
technologies, in Microsoft technologies. And there's someone that's sitting in Cisco networks, and there's someone is sitting that in Microsoft that recognizing that, hey, there are a bunch of students, there are a bunch of candidates who are taking these certs down in Jamaica and they're passing them, right? And they have their partners that they share this information with. Well, some of these partners, or even Cisco themselves, or even Microsoft themselves, they're going to look and they're going to say, well, their expertise down in Jamaica. So why can't we open what's called, a TAC center, which is a technical assistance center down in Jamaica, right?
Yes.
Nothing against India, to our friends over in India. But if I were to have an issue and I pick up the phone, more likely I'm going to get someone in India, and I'm getting someone in Costa Rica. I sometimes get people that's down in Mexico, and over in the Philippines is a very hot is a hot spot right now, that are picking up the phone and trying to address my issue. They're very intelligent people, very smart people, but the reason they're able to do this is because their government or their educational institution invested in their education and the availability of these courses for them to prepare themselves so that they can take advantage of the opportunities that might be there. I mean, Cisco or Microsoft is not going to go to Jamaica or to Lucy to set up a support center and say, okay, a support center is here now, let's get the folks ready. No, you're going to have to prepare the folks first, let them realize that there's a reservoir of available talent down there. And now they will say, hey, you know what? A reservoir of available talents are down here. What we're going to do, we're going to build a facility there to let these folks start providing support for our customers. And that's one of the ways that we could do it, right? So if someone decides, graduates from high school, and they said, you know what? college is not for me right now, or I'd like to go to college, but I just cannot afford it right now. They are prepared and they have the skill sets that they could now start going into these different areas to work. And
Yes, yes.
which is going to benefit everyone. It's going to benefit them as an individual, and it's going to benefit our economy, right? But first we have to start investing in their education.
I totally agree on that. And I don't want to stop your flow because I get the impression you're leaning based on the point you're trying to make, you're leaning towards outsourcing because you mentioned, I mean, persons going into other countries, businesses going to other countries with their businesses just to get persons to train them, provide the educational advancement so they could also get to answer the phone calls of be customer service persons. So can you develop that point, grow on that point some more for me? Talk about that, the outsourcing aspect of it.
I mean, that's a whole big avenue that that started, years ago, right? And the reason they do it, it's let's talk about American companies because this is where I live. The,
And take a
the,
look at the free zone in Montego Bay because the free
the
zone is a very big outsourcing too.
yeah, the reason they do it is, hey, you know what? I want to be able to bring you the support, or that you need if we're basing it on technology. I want to bring you the same quality support, but I want to do it at a more cost effective rate. So I don't like to use the word cheap, but that's exactly what it is, right? It's
Yes,
cheaper labor, right, with the same quality. So now
yes,
we're able to bring it to other areas. So they could now bring it down to Jamaica. And for folks living down there, it's great money, right? It's great money
absolutely.
to benefit them and their family, and also the Jamaican economy, right?
Yes,
But at the same token, it's a cost savings for the solution or service providers here that are exporting the jobs over there, right? So again, you see those, they're call center jobs that are down in Jamaica. For example, Amazon.
yes.
I've picked up the phone and called Amazon already, and someone in Jamaica answered my call. I'm a member of 24-hour fitness, which is a gym, by the way. It doesn't look like I go to a gym, but I used to go to a gym, guys. Don't judge me. Right. So yeah, so I've picked up the phone and I've called my gym, the 24-hour fitness, and they're down in Montego Bay. My thing is, those are those are good jobs, right? But they're low level jobs. Why can't we have some, technical jobs which requires great expertise down in Jamaica, right? We can do it. We have we have the educational ability. We have very bright minds down there, young bright minds, right? That would be able to benefit from this. But the folks that are in power, need to be able to see this. And us right now that are trying to grow this Brosis, we can actually introduce it down to down at Ruseas High School. I'm not sure how entertaining they're going to be of the idea, but if we present the idea, then it could become beneficial to not only Lucy but the entire country, because other high schools will see it and say, hey, you know what, this is not a bad idea. We should probably start doing something like this. And how we see it, right? If this were to start in Lucy, then you have schools that are in Montego Bay might say, hey, you know what, we don't have the resources to start one of these labs in every high school. So now we could start partner together. So some folks from Herbert Morrison can be sent to Lucy, some folks from Cornwall College can be sent down to the lab there, and so on and so forth. So you're doing kind of a consortium, right? They're working together for the common good. Until it
Yes,
grows, then it could start finding its way into these other areas.
yes. And that's a very great point you just made there, just now, Norrin, because also, you know, I remember that in order for us to have all this, that's a very great idea that you brought up. You know, in order for us to have that available, we need proper security to protect our investment. So when I look at what you were just talking about, it came on me to say, I remember there are persons who bought these doorbells and they put it on their doors. It has cameras. So you can see who's talking, who's standing at your door talking to you. But there was a call, there was some in the news someday that somebody was able to tap into that to talk to this person in their room through their camera. So we're talking now, we're heading towards security. Can you
Hmm.
talk about security over the internet?
Well, so so here's the thing, right? There are many ways that you could move towards protecting yourself. Anytime you're connected to the internet, there's an inherent risk for connecting. Pretty much the same way as if when you open the bank, the door of the bank, right? There's an inherent risk. Someone
Yes,
could walk in the bank and rob the bank, but are you going to close the bank to prevent a bank robbery? The answer is no. You're going to put measures in place to mitigate the risk. So in pretty much the
absolutely.
same way, you could actually there are measures that you would put in place to mitigate the risk exposure that you have when leveraging any of these technologies. One way to do that is to ensure that you have there's what we call firewalls, right,
Yes,
that are implemented to safeguard against the unwanted entry in your, when I say the one unwanted entry in your network, because now you have formed a network when you have put these technologies in place. So you put firewalls in place to guard against it. If whatever gadget you have, whether or not this be a laptop or this be your smartphone or whatever technologies you're using to get to connect to the internet, you want to make sure that you have antivirus protection. You want to make sure that you have some form of malware protection, on your device. Understand the risk factors that are out there. For example, everyone wants to use email, and email is probably one of the best inventions
yes,
that's out there. But there's some best practices. You get an email from an unknown person, don't open it. Someone sends you a link and you know that it's not coming from a trusted source. Well, don't click on the link, right? You get an email from a Nigerian prince that is asking you to send them, you know, um, $200 or $500. Well, don't send it to them because the Nigerian prince doesn't exist. So
right.
the more familiar we become with the risk that are out there, I think the better it's going to be for us to safeguard ourselves. Any computer that you're connecting to the internet, anti-malware. So that's mean antivirus protection, spyware protection. Emails, don't click in emails, you don't know where they're coming from, so on and so forth. One of the things that in terms of security, one of the things that we should always do is change our passwords regularly, right? Some of
Yes,
us, we create a
agree.
password and we never change it. Well, let me tell you a story. It might be very disheartening, but every password can be circumvented. It's just a matter of time, because
Yes.
passwords are just made from a combination of numbers and letters and special
Letters, yes.
characters, right?
Yes.
And it's just a matter of writing an algorithm to go through all the potential combinations that are out there. So some password can take, you know, 5 billion years to crack. Some can take, 5 seconds to
Yes.
crack, right? But yeah, but the thing is, you don't know whether or not you're going to be with the worst luck in the world to say, hey, the first 3 tries that they make, they circumvented my password. So change your password regularly. you
Yes.
know
Yes. Yes.
Use complex passwords. What do we call complex passwords in IT? It's a password with a combination of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and a special character. Well, what is a special character? Like the number sign, the exclamation sign, the at symbol. Those are special characters. Don't use words, dictionary words, to create your password.
Yes.
Don't use password for your password,
Yeah.
right? You will be surprised. Just a matter of, even if you were to use a dictionary word, which is a very bad practice, but adding a special character and changing the cases up in, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers will just greatly improve your security.
Yes. Thank you for talking about that. And I was laughing when you mentioned the passwords, because some of the times, I will be honest with you, sometimes I totally forget my password. And I have
Hmm.
to keep changing my password. I don't change it because of what you just talked about. I change it because I can't remember it. So maybe it's a good thing when I forget the password, I have to go back to forget password and just get a new password again. But how can is there any tips or ways that you can give to businesses or individuals on how to further protect their information over the internet?
Yeah, sure. Again, like I said, once you are connected to the internet, there's an inherent risk, right? But there are
Yeah.
four things you can do with risk. You can accept your risk, you could, mitigate your risk, you can transfer your risk, or you can avoid your risk, right? Avoiding the risk is saying, I'm not going to go on the internet. But any business or individual that's not, leveraging technology is putting themselves at a disadvantage, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
in terms of businesses, yes, ensure that you have, you're following security best practices. Again,
Yes.
password. If you're a business, small or large or medium, ensure that you're educating your users. Hey, security is not just the responsibility of the network engineers or the security engineer. It's the responsibility of everyone. As
Yes,
humans,
sir. Yes,
we're
sir.
very selfish, right? And when I say selfish, if I recognize how I could be adversely affected by anything that I do, I'm going to take, a better approach to ensure that I'm protecting myself. And in so protecting myself, I'm protecting the organization. Well, if there's bad publicity about any organization as a result of my misstep, then I might be affected, right?
Yeah,
It might be
absolutely.
affected that the organization start to lose money. And if the organization start to lose money, then what they're going to do, they're going to start laying people off. And if they
Yes,
start
sir.
laying people off, I could be adversely affected. So I'm going to do
Yes,
my,
sir.
take my due diligence in ensuring that I'm following security best practice as administered or as given by the organization to protect the organization, intellectual property, right? I cannot say it, often enough. Ensuring that we have, you know, good password guidelines, right?
Yes,
Ensuring that we,
absolutely.
yeah, ensuring that we're leveraging, malware, anti-malware protection, whether or not that be antivirus protection, spyware protection, leveraging, follow the guidelines, of your company best practices. You know, in most organizations, they will have what's called acceptable use policies, etc. Right. So those are some of the ways that technologies can use to protect themselves. Educate your users or educate your kids about social engineering, right? Educate your kids about viruses, about emails, not accepting emails from people you don't know.
Absolutely. Do not open emails from names or email addresses that you're not expecting, that you do not know. That's a very good point right there. Now, in terms of when you speak so much about these things, I'm learning so much right now because you're teaching me so much stuff that I never thought I would learn about internet passwords and anything about technology. Because especially about cybersecurity, it is so the intricate details that you just mentioned. It is very interesting that persons pay close attention to their passwords. How often do you think a person should change their password? Like, once every 2 months, once every 3 months?
So here's the thing, right? It's kind of a tough situation. In most organizations that I've worked in, we normally say change your password every 90 days. But
Okay,
you know, one of the but the more often you change your password, the better it is, right? But also you run into
absolutely.
an issue wherein folks are not able to remember their password. And if you're not able to remember the password, what you're going to do, you're going to have the tendency of starting to write it down. If you start
Right.
writing down your password, then you become vulnerable, right?
Yes.
I used to work for an organization in New York City, of course, which I'll remain nameless. And one of the things that some of the users used to do is the sticky note. They would write their password on the sticky note and just stick it on the back of their monitor. So anyone that goes to the desk or pass by the cleaning folks, you know, can actually just look behind the monitor and they'll see passwords there. And most organization will have what we call a naming convention, that is, you know, a standard format that they use to create username. Now, if I know anything about technology, this is how vulnerable we are. If I know anything about technology, Well, what if I were to start a cleaning business and say, hey, I'm going to go apply for the a cleaning job at, you know, ABC company, right? And I know these tendencies that people will stick their password on their monitors, or use their child's birthday, you know, or you know, their street address or whatever it is. Now, what that's going to do, it's going to give me an in. And when I start walking around to clean the office, I start checking keyboards, start checking
Yes.
monitors, start checking everything. And now I go back in the middle of the day, I go to my basement or wherever I reside, and start just, you know, I did my reconnaissance before, and now I'm going to start you know, logging into the organization to see how much information I could gain, right? And people do these kind of things for financial gain, or just to defame the organization. So the best practice every 90 days, and one of the things that you should do is to also educate your users. You know, educate your
Yes.
users, educate your kids in
Yes.
your home, educate your
Yes.
students in your schools, educate your workers in your organization.
Yes. And I cannot stress that enough. And you talk so much about education, educating your oneself. And in terms of education, there's also online programs that persons can do, because you have there's long distance learning. Persons can always go online and sign up for programs. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so you could sign up for online training. You know, some of those training might be security centric, some of them might be just general computer use, right? So you have to, one of the best, who is the best evaluator of what your shortcomings are, right, for lack of better terms. You can evaluate yourself, know what your areas of weaknesses are, and then you
Yes.
seek out programs that will help you to turn those weaknesses into strength, right? Your organizations will be able to assist you with that, because organization wants to ensure that they provide their end users with the best training possible,
Best.
because it actually
Absolutely. Absolutely.
helps the organization, you know, provide security. And also for your own development, you're responsible for your own development. So after
Yes.
you have evaluated yourself, you could go out there and search for resources to make the improvements that you think that you need, or you could, you know, tell your directives, or your directors at your organization, and they will provide you with the necessary
Yes.
training, right? So
Yes. Uh,
those are some of the steps. And there's a cool website out there. It's called google.com, right? Every
yes.
and a lot of people know it, so I say it jokingly, but you can find the answer to anything you want on Google. It's just a
Yes,
matter of
sir.
knowing how to search, right? So
Yes.
you can find them, the answers to a good recipe. Actually, I learned to make fried dumplings on Google. I can tell you that,
Google.
and they come out great, right? So, you know, so in pretty much the same way, you could, hey, how do I secure my iPhone? How do I secure my Android? How do I prevent my kids from visiting unwanted websites, right? Those are some of the tips that you could look for. Just think about the question in your mind, and just try to type it in Google, and you'll be surprised, you know, that the answers that you could find.
Yes. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the man himself, Norwin Phillips. He's
So
been so eloquent in. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I kind of just glanced over and I saw the chat that's coming into us. And one of the
Oh,
questions that I
yes.
saw there is, what about phishing? Well,
Oh, fishing. That's a part of the security.
yeah, fishing. So
Yes.
so think about the concept of going out to fish, right? You live in Lucy, and you go down to Bulls Bay, and you
Yes.
throw your line, and you're hoping that, you know, a fish try to hook onto your line, right?
Yes.
Right. So that's fishing in the traditional sense. Well, they have taken that same concept, and they have now, you know, start putting that in technology. And here's what they do. They use, instead of using a fishing line and a hook, they're using technology as a tool, right? So they might say, hey, you know what? We're going to send an email out, and we're going to create this email saying that, hey, I'm the Nigerian prince, and I just won $40 million, but because I'm not a US citizen, I cannot collect it. So I'm going to send the email out to asking people to send me $200 and I'll give them half of the winnings, right? Well, what they do is they send these emails out to you, and probably you just pick a number, and they send the email out to 100,000 people. Out of those 100,000 people, they already know that 90% are going to know that this is a hoax, right? But
Yes,
10% might
yes, yes,
respond.
yes,
So out
yes,
of the
yes,
100,000, if you get 10% respond, let's do the math, right? We're going to
yes,
get 10,000 people responding. And out of
yes,
those 10,000 people, they know that 50% might comply. And if
yes.
50% were to comply and send $1,000, we now have not a thousand is a lot, but $100. So
Right.
now you have 5,000 people sending $100. Well, that's a lot of money right there,
It is.
right? So that's what phishing is, right? They leverage technology as a tool to try to, so that's their bait, and they send it out there and try to see who bite, right? So when you respond and you give them your username and your password to your bank account, then they'll be able to log in and just steal your money. So people don't do that. Don't do that. It's no different from, the scammers from a country to be named remained nameless, call folks in America or in England and say that they just won some money. They should, go to Western Union and sell $500 or $400, right? That's a form, that's social engineering. That's also scamming.
Yes,
But they're
yes,
leveraging technology because the phone is a technology
yes,
that
yes,
allows for instant communication, right? And
yes,
they
yes,
and Google is a very powerful tool because they get your name, they get your address, they go right in Google, and there's what's called Street View. They know
there it
exactly
is.
where you live. They could use walk on the computer and see that a CVS is next close to you. So when they're speaking to you, they're speaking with this form of authority that says, okay, man, this is legit, because how would they know all this information about me? Right.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yep.
So how do you, I mean, to prevent all of that also, is it safe for persons to be posting their current, it just came to my head just now, like persons like to post what they're doing immediately in real time. They're cooking right now, they're at home, they're not at home, they're away, they'll be away for 5 or 10 months from their house. I mean, how does security work in that regard?
So that's just common sense, right? It doesn't, and technology doesn't teach common sense,
No.
right? So if you're giving me the information that I want, I have bad intentions, and you're going to be away from your home, telling me that you're going to Jamaica for 6 months. Oh, I can't wait to be on the beach down there, and you're posting that on Facebook. Well, as your neighbor that have bad intentions, I know you're not going to be there. Well, what am I going to do with that
Absolutely.
information? So people just need to understand that, hey, when you post stuff on Facebook or when you post stuff in social media, it's like going in Lucy Square and getting a megaphone and saying and telling people exactly what you're doing with your life, right? And now, what they do with that information, you're at their mercy. So,
Yes.
well, let's look at it from now. You're going in Facebook and doing it. It's not just limited to the Lucy Square town, but it's limited. It's pretty much to anywhere that the internet is available. So
Yes.
it could be in Japan, it could be in South Africa, it could be the Dominican Republic, Nigeria, wherever it is. Folks can see that. So that's what you're doing, right? So, folks, I tell you, don't do that, right? If you're cooking, it's different, and you're sharing a video.
Of
But if
course.
you're going to be
Of
away from
course.
your home, and one of the things that has happened before, right, is Uber drivers, they come and pick you up, and they say, okay, drop me off to the airport. And once they drop you off to the airport, they turn around and try to go to your house. There are people that actually have done that. And and
Yes.
and and back
Yes.
to your point, one of the point that we talked about earlier, those cameras, right? That's the I think you're talking about the Ring camera
Right.
that's
Yes.
there. Well, those are the cameras that help them to find the culprit,
Oh,
because the Ring
yes.
camera was
Yes.
there, and that's how they found out the individuals that were doing it. So while it can be, you know, while it could work for the bad, it could also work
It
for the
can also
good,
work for the good.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
someone was mentioning, someone in the chat mentioned that scam, phishing is actually aka scamming in the real world.
It
Yeah,
is.
so don't get scammed, people. Don't get
Don't get
scammed, I beg you.
that's yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
man, that's
any other
it's
questions?
I don't have any right now. Norwin, it's been a pleasure talking with you so much. I've learned so much in in this hour that we've been talking, and I wish that we had more time so that we could. We have to have you back on this program. We have to have you back because there's so much things that I want to ask you. There's so much things that we need to know that you need to expound on, and we may have to have you on this program another time so we could do this again.
Sure. I look forward to doing it again, and sharing my knowledge wherever I can do so. Right. It's about empowering each other.
Yes.
I use this in my classes. I use this in my, my work life, and I also use it at home. Right. And I'm kind of using it
Yes.
in this forum. I think together we're stronger. So
Yes.
whatever insight that I have that I can share with someone to make a positive impact in somebody's life, right? I'd be more than happy to come back to do this, whether it be someone that's looking to pursue a career in technology, if it's someone just not knowing how to really manage or leverage the technologies, the piece of technology that they have in their hand in terms of their phone. Because I mean,
Yes.
it could do a lot of good for you if you know how to use it, and it could also be detrimental to you if you do not know how to use it, right? So these tech talks, whatever benefits that it could bring to folks, it would be my absolute pleasure to come back and have a discussion and expound on anything that folks like to expound on. One of the things that individuals could do, like I mentioned, and I think someone pasted in the chat, is you could send us an email at ruseas.brosis. So it's how do I spell Russie again?
So much
Ruseas
things.
without the apostrophe dot brosis, all right, at gmail.com. If you send us an email there with your questions, we'll be able to put one of these tech talks together, ensuring that we're addressing your questions. And while we do that, I encourage you not only invite members who are member of who are part of the Brosis organization, but just anyone out there who would like to to learn about technology, to learn about how technology could be a change, it could bring about a change in their life, or how they could pursue technology as a career. I could tell you this, we're looking for a lot of young folks, a lot of Black folks in technology, right? And anyone who is willing to come, you're more than welcome. And I could be your coach as much as I can be to help you to reach your true potential. So leverage us.
Yes, thank you so much, Norwin. You have because persons you can put the information out there so persons can they reach you through WhatsApp? Can they call you? Can they text you?
So
Email you?
I think the email approach is the best approach, right? Because
Yes,
understand that I do have other obligations. So if I start
yes,
getting WhatsApp or text and stuff like, it becomes a little bit more challenging, right?
good,
But
good.
if I start seeing emails, I will actually carve time out of my schedule to ensure that I'm addressing these emails and come
Yes,
back in a more in a setting like this to be
yes,
able to answer it on a more global
yes,
basis, because it's going to be very challenging and very demanding to deal with everyone on an individual basis. But if we're
absolutely.
talking about you know dealing with folks and responding to questions as a group, it's more manageable.
And more beneficial too. And what you can do is type that email, put it out there so persons can see it. Because some persons may not be online to see the live feed, so you can type it and put it out there so persons can send the information to you directly.
Sure.
And I thank you so much, Norwin. I can't say it enough because so much information you have. This is equivalent to the kind of meals that Centipede brought last week. This is food for the brain that you brought here.
It's a
So
different
much
kind of hunger,
information.
yeah.
It's a different kind of hunger. So persons out there are hungry now for this information. And I thank you so much for taking your time. You didn't have to be here. You had so much things to do. I know you're a very busy person. And I really appreciate you taking the time out to come out and explain all these information that they are sending out to us right now.
All right, thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to doing it again.
we look forward to have you again very soon, Norwin. Thank you again, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys. See you soon. Send your questions in.
And Ruseas Brosis, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us here. And this is Darwin checking out. We look forward to see you next week when we have some more information for you. Thank you and have a good evening.